Welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about doing an annual review of your astrology business. If you love astrology, give us a like in the comments below. As the year comes to an end, it's an obvious time to have a look back at how things went in the last 12 months. At the moment I'm talking to you in December, and we're moving towards the end of the year at quite a lick. So for your business review, you want to be looking back at what you did in the last 12 months, and then we're also going to be looking at plans you can make for your future for the next 12 months in your astrology business. And as New Age people, experience tells us that we want to create our future in a conscious way. And this is done by putting in place certain things that we're going to be doing, how we're going to address things, and specifically things that you can use in your astrology business to make the next year a better one. It's a funny thing, but in the astrological world, we often see the new year as beginning on your birthday when the sun makes a conjunction to your own sun. But we do live in the world with everybody else. So you're going to take the calendar year, and I'm specifically looking now at January to December next year. However, if you're watching this video in mid-year, you can certainly consider where you're going to be going in the next 12 months. And that's what we're looking at today. So if we look back over the last 12 months of your astrology business, you may have been doing an awful lot of things, a few fragmented things, some bits and bobs here, or maybe you're just considering starting and only just began an astrology business in the last 12 months. So there are many things that can be considered, but what you need to do is actually pay attention to what you did do in the last 12 months in your astrology business. So it's natural to have had some good times, and you may have experienced a few hard moments in the past 365 days. But if you accept that what is done is gone, and you really cannot change the past, then what you do from this day moving forward is the only part that you can control. I do believe this is a philosophy for life. There is no point. You cannot change the past. So even though we are looking back, we can see experience taught us some particular things. When you are looking forward, you have far more control about how you want to expend your energy. And that's really what we're going to consider now. As an astrologer, part of looking back over the year is actually considering what you did. Perhaps you were working with clients, and if you were lucky enough to work with clients, I would want to know how many clients did you work with in the last 12 months? How did you feel those interactions went? Are you stronger on natal, or do you consider forecasting to be your main interest? By the same token, you may have been giving some general classes, teaching astrology perhaps, or you could have been giving lectures, maybe at conferences or at other venues where you were invited to talk to actually spread your astrology business in some way. The other ways you could have worked with your astrology business is doing an astrology podcast, as my good friend Norma does, or you could perhaps be writing horoscopes for magazines, or in some way you would have developed your business in the last 12 months. And it could have been a combination of all of these things that we're now going to be actually having a look at. If you have some statistics about how many charts you read, how many clients you met, how many lectures you gave, how many books you read, that will be great to take you forward. But from this point on, wherever you are at this moment, we cannot change the past. All we can do is look to the future, to the next 12 months, and decide how things are going to go for you then. So we're going to spend the majority of this moment looking forward and seeing how we can bring into manifestation the actual astrology business that we would like to have. Looking back over the last 12 months, can you decide which transit was the most stimulating for you? Which was the actual transit that made a difference in the last 12 months? That's the one you want to focus on. To bring in a second layer of understanding of what went down in the last 12 months, you would want to consider which secondary progression opened you up to the deepest insights during the past 12 months. This will work in tandem with the main transit that occurred, and it helps you focus in on the big picture about what happened for you in your astrology business in the last 12 months. Also considering your natal chart, you want to look at which house was the most invigorated through transits, progressions, or anything else during the last 12 months. This is where a lot of your energy would have been focused and where a lot of your effort would have been expended. I also want you to consider which interesting astrological tips or tricks did you learn recently? If you're a beginner astrologer, of course, there may be many things that you are learning. But if you're a seasoned astrologist, someone who's perhaps been doing it for 5 or 10 years, you might be getting in a rut and you want to go look back and see which was the new technique you learned over the last 12 months. One example I'm going to give you about myself was that I was working closely with my friend Norma, my good friend Norma, the astrologer, and she came up with what we are now calling the Norma Lachance technique for calculating Anticia. I'm not going to blow it for you now, and that's for her to tell you, but what I am saying is that during the course of this last 12 months, a new way of considering and looking at calculations came my way that I thought was amazing at the time, and I have certainly taken her technique into all of the charts I work on when I'm calculating Anticia. So it's that sort of thing. Even after, over 25 years of working with charts, there is still something new to learn, and you need to pay attention to what tip or trick did you learn in the last 12 months. I also want you to consider which part of astrology are you going to drop. Gasp, because it doesn't interest you. Not every part of astrology is as interesting as the next, although generally as an astrologer I find so much of it is fascinating. Not every single thing about astrology really interests me, and there are some things that I will be dropping and not working with further as we go into the next year. One of the things that particularly I find irritating about astrology is actually doing rectification. I find, to me, it's an utter waste of time. And maybe some of you will see it differently. However, personally, I don't do rectifications. I don't feel I want to waste my time doing that type of work. And that's just one small factor in astrology that I don't do anymore. So you might have something on your list too. So let's have a look at next year's review. And the question I'm thinking is, can you really review next year? Because it hasn't happened yet, clearly not. But we are going to look at how we like to plan our next year so that we can see how it's going to go forward for us through intention. So first up, what self-predictions can you make? You need to look in the next 12 months at your transits and secondary progressions, particularly, or solar arc directions, or whatever your thing is in astrology, and do a self-prediction for yourself. Are you having a lot of pressure on your fifth house? Are you likely to grow groups? Is your career going to take off? Where can you focus? Is it a time for more research? And self-prediction means writing it down and saying, I'm saying that in the next 12 months, I expect to see this, this, and this develop through my life, through the astrology, and reference it. As always, every astrological indicator has to be referenced so that you can say to yourself confidently, now at the beginning of the year, I see this unfolding, and we can focus on that. So what new astrological technique are you going to take on board next year? If you're a beginner astrology, there are hundreds of things that you can learn, all the different tips and tricks and part of fortune or decumbiture or anything deep in astrology. And if you again are a seasoned astrologer, this might be a good time for you to go deep in one area. For instance, if you feel that solar return charts is something that you kind of know about, but you don't know enough about, that would be a good example of how you could go deep in a particular technique in astrology. So I don't know what that technique is going to be for you, and at this stage I'm not sure what it's going to be for me, but I do know that I will want to go deep, and not just broad. I want to go deep into some areas of astrology during the next 12 months. In the next 12 months, do you plan to buy a speciality astrology book? So a speciality astrology book is not just a general how to read charts, how to do this. That's what we call beginner books. But speciality astrology books are specific books exploring very tight areas in astrology. I'm going to give you an example of two speciality astrology books that I recently purchased, and I have to tell you that I have a massive, extensive astrology library that I have sold off on several occasions and rebuilt with multiple editions. However, there are two new books that came my way recently, which I actually have just purchased from Amazon and haven't actually read yet. So the first is Astrology, A Place in Chaos by Bernadette Brady. This is a book that I plan to explore in great detail in the next 12 months. And then the second book that I recently bought is called Astrology and Cosmology in the World's Religion by Nicholas Campion. I'm a huge fan of his work, absolutely. This is interesting me. I haven't got to these books yet, but these are examples of speciality astrology books that you may want to buy, not necessarily these, but where you have an interest, get that speciality book, make sure you fully understand what's going on, stretch yourself and I want to say, into your niche. Know what you're good at in astrology and explore things down those routes. So these are the 2 books that I'm using this year, and I'd love to hear what your 2 books are going to, maybe your 1 book, your 1 speciality book will be that you're going to purchase in the next 12 months. Have you ever considered doing an astrology research project? With an astrology business, if you're seeing clients and you're working on charts and you're giving lectures or doing horoscopes, there is still room in there for research to occur. And the things that interest you in astrology, where you can specialize down into a particular part of astrology, that is where good research can occur, because you could specifically focus in on a particular type of astrology or some feature in a chart and know it well and know it good. Specialize in a particular area. Perhaps you like eclipses, and that would be where you would specialize this year. Several years ago, I began a research project into an area of astrology that interests me, and that was the Oriental planet. And ultimately, I wrote this book about the Oriental planet because I had so much research data, because I found it was so interesting. I went down deep, and it actually became a research project for myself. And this was something unexpected. I didn't really start the year before thinking, oh, I like the Oriental planet. It was just one of those things that became super important for me. I was looking for it in every chart, and I started making notes about it, referencing it, researching. Ultimately, I did massive research on hundreds of charts to create the actual data that goes into this book. And this is what I'm talking about, that if you become an advanced astrologer and you're running an astrology business, do yourself a favor and take your speciality and do further research and develop the knowledge in astrology, that the basic knowledge that everyone else is tapping into, and leave something behind. This is what it's all about, going deep, becoming the expert in one area. I would also want you at this stage to list any other astrological plans you have going forward for the next year. It really could be anything. It might be go to a conference, it might be take more classes, it might be read more books, do more charts, or reach out to more people, or prepare your website, or build up your professional credibility in some way, build your reputation. On the other hand, if you want to go down the research route, you may find you want to withdraw for 12 months and actually spend that time doing research and looking into something that really interests you. The point is, you need to make a list about what you plan to do with your time during the next 12 months. Not everybody is reading charts all day, every day, and that's sometimes a misconception about being an astrologer, that all you do is read charts. It's not. There is so much more to it than that. So having looked at all of those, what are your plans for professional improvement in the next year? And by professional improvement, I mean doing some collaborations with other astrologers, building the business side of your practice, putting yourself out there on social media in one way or another, promoting what you're doing, making sure that you are on brand and that the message you are putting forward is quite clear, the type of astrology you're doing. Maybe you're doing esoteric, maybe you're doing traditional, maybe you're doing Hellenistic, or maybe psychological. Whatever your actual tight niche is going to be with astrology, make sure that your website and your business card and everything that you put forward branding wise underlines and reinforces exactly the message you want to give. So there I've given you several tips and tricks about how to review what you did in the last year and how to plan to do something great next year. The point is that you can go on year in, year out, doing a couple of charts a week, calling yourself an astrologer, and that's as far as you get. Once you decide to make it a business, you have to step it up a bit. You've got to level up and get everything sorted out, get the business side sorted out, get your skills organized, and start exploring research or developing some new techniques, or explore different areas of astrology to add to our general knowledge for astrologers. I do believe that if you can start thinking about what interests you the most in astrology, that is your clue about where you should focus your efforts. If you've enjoyed this video, do give us a like and consider subscribing. I'm Alison Price, an astrologer in Vancouver. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.